the way that we do Hallel today, we could figure out many laws about what the original Hallel was. Um, and as we said, some of the things about Hallel, some of the things that they did were minhagim, meaning there's the actual recital of the Hallel. Then there's certain things, morning Ralph, that were so to speak, customary, and therefore some of those customs over the years have changed regarding the recital of the Hallel. So he said many important laws we learn from the way we recite Hallel today in our times. Good morning, Jaime.
Morning, Rabbi.
And we welcome back Mr. Haber. Mr. Haber. So the top of the page, as we said yesterday, that Rava says 38b1. Many halachot that we learn from the way we recite the Hallel tells us what was the original enactment of the Hallel. And we said, and originally when they made the enactment of the Hallel, the people were not so knowledgeable. They didn't know how to read the Hallel by heart. And there was one person saying the Hallel for the community, just like we have today. Interesting, we have the Chazarat Hashatz, the repetition of the Shemona Esrei that goes on in every minyan, Shachas and Mincha, is that the point of that was for the uneducated Jew. The uneducated Jew who did not know how to recite the Tfilah, the Amidah. So the rabbi said that's why everybody who knows how to recite the Amidah says the Amidah themselves. That's the Lachash. That's the Amidah that we do every morning quietly. But then we repeat the Amidah. Why do we repeat the Amidah? We repeat the Amidah for the people who don't know how to say the Amidah. That's the main reason, because we're worried about all those people that come to the synagogue, that they should also be involved in Jewish life. They shouldn't feel they come into synagogue, they don't know what they. But you see how much we're concerned, Ralph, for all those people who don't know. We want them to be part of it, and therefore, different communities have different customs regarding Friday night kiddush. Do they say kiddush in the synagogue Friday night or not? Those community God that do say it is because they're worried about those people who don't know how to say kiddush when they come home. So they're worried about those people, and therefore those communities that say kiddush Friday night in the synagogue, one of those main reasons is for those people. That's one of the reasons that are given for those people who don't know how to recite the kiddush. So originally, when they instituted the Hallel, and we said the Hallel was instituted by Nevi'im, there were prophets among the people that instituted this mitzvah, this obligation of Hallel. And so originally, since some people are not, God bless you, are not learned, so therefore they had one person saying it out loud. But the people who were learned, those people in the congregation that were learned, did not have to say the whole, did not have to listen to the Chazan. They could say it themselves. However, even though they could say it themselves, but there were certain things that they should also be participating in the Hallel. So that's what we said right here. It starts at the top of the page, second line from the top. Hu omer Hallelujah. He would say Hallelujah, like we said, the Chazan would open up the Hallel. The first word of Hallel is Hallelujah. That's the first word, right? After you say the bracha, the Gemara is the Hallel. If you want, I brought the Siddurim. If you look at the Siddur, right? If you want, you can take a look at the page where the Hallel is found. The Hallel in that Siddur is page 430. So if you look at page 430, you start with the bracha, the Gemara is the Hallel. Then the first word that follows the Gemara to Hallel is the word Hallelujah. So in the times of Rava, is that the Chazan says the word Hallelujah, and everybody afterwards, all the members of the congregation respond Hallelujah. Everybody responds Hallelujah. Praise be Hashem. That was the custom in the days of Rava. Now, why was that done in the custom and days of Rava? By the time Rava's time, there was an increase in Jewish education and knowledge of the Hallel, and many of the people most of the people did not need to hear the Chazan say the Hallel. They were able to know the Hallel on their own. It could be also sometimes something that's a song. It's easier for people to something or something that maybe the Hallel is something that's unique, and then they also were able to say it themselves. But nevertheless, they all opened up, both the people that were knowledgeable in the synagogue. Good morning, Simon, and the people that were not knowledgeable in the synagogue. They all opened up with the word Hallelujah. That means in response to the Chazan. The Chazan, let's say either everybody said the bracha together, or they all listened to the bracha of the Chazan on the Hallel. That's a matter of question. But after the bracha was said, then the Chazan says Hallelujah. Everyone responds Hallelujah. So the Gemara says Mikash mitzvah la'anos Hallelujah. This teaches us that the original enactment, when they enacted the Hallel back in the time of the prophets, the enactment was that everybody needs to respond in the beginning of the Hallel. Everyone needs to respond the word Hallelujah. Everyone, whether you learn it or not learn it, interactive participation of all members of the community at the original Hallel. Now, then the Gemara says, then we say, Hu Omer, Halu Avdei Hashem, right? That's the next three words of the Hallel on page 430. They would say, Halu Avdei Hashem, which means the servants of Hashem should praise God. So the way they did in the days of Rava is this: the Chazan would say, Halu Avdei Hashem, and everybody would also respond, Hallelujah. Right, exactly. They would also respond, Hallelujah. Why was that? That was to teach us what the old custom was, that the old custom was, we can, mitzvah, there was a mitzvah, that if there wasn't a gadol, a person who was reading the Hallel on behalf of the community, if somebody was reading the Hallel and you were listening to their Hallel, you needed to respond throughout the Hallel, Hallelujah. And as we said last time, there was, the Rambam counts 123 Hallelujahs throughout the Hallel, because then you would say, let's say they would say the next pasuk, Hi Shem Hashem Mevorach Me'atah V'Alam, you respond Hallelujah. Constantly, every pasuk or different parts of the Hallel, there was the response of Hallelujah. Now, Hu Omer Hodu Hashem. We get to the part of the Hodu Hashem Kitov Ki Olam Chasto. Hu Omer Hodu Hashem, Vehem Omrim Hodu Hashem. And they also would say out loud, the Chazan would say the word Hodu Hashem Kitov Ki Olam Chasto, and the community would respond after him, Hodu Hashem Kitov Ki Olam Chasto. Now, what was the reason why the community would respond after him, Hodu Hashem Kitov Ki Olam Chasto? Because Mikan, this teaches us, the Gemara says, Shemitzvah Lanot Roshi Prokim. There's a mitzvah to respond to the beginning of a chapter. That means every chapter, right? The Hallel is made up of chapters from the Tehillim, and every chapter of the Tehillim, the original mitzvah was that every person in the Kahal, when they enacted it, should repeat after the Chazan at least the first line of each chapter. So let's say the chapters of the Tehillim, let's say maybe there's like 6 chapters of Tehillim in the Hallel. So the original enactment was that each person should repeat the beginning, at least the beginning of each chapter. Let's say the chapters Mo'ashiv L'Hashem Tol Tagmuloi Eloi, or Hashem Zechoni Yavarech. The Chazan would start the beginning of the chapter, and everybody was there at the beginning of each chapter. But today we don't we don't need to respond to the beginning of each chapter, but at least they kept it by responding to one of the chapters, and that would remind everybody about what was done in the past. So when they're doing that, when they're saying that out loud, is because they want to show you that there was a mitzvah to respond to the beginning of the chapter with the Chazan. Then the Gemara continues. Good morning, Mark.
Rabbi.
Good morning. Then the Gemara says, Itmanami, Omer Rav Chanan Barava. Rav Chanan Barava says, Mitzvah la'anot Roshi Prokim. There was a mitzvah. Originally, the mitzvah was that the beginning of each chapter of the Tehillim that's found in the Hallel, right? There's maybe 6 chapters of Tehillim in the Hallel, that when the Chazan used to open up in the beginning of the enactment of the Hallel, the days of the Nevi'im, of the prophets, the community would respond the beginning, would say the first pasuk of the beginning of each chapter. Today, instead of following in the first pasuk of each chapter, that's why in the days of Rava they repeated the first pasuk of Hodu Lashem Kitov Kilom Chasto, to show that you're supposed to repeat the beginning of the chapter, or that's how the early custom was. Now, who omer Ana Hashem Hoshiana? The Chazan says Ana Hashem Hoshiana, and Vehein Omrim, and the community responds Ana Hashem Hoshiana. So the Gemara is explaining to us why are certain parts of the Hallel done with the community's involvement, and certain parts of the Hallel are done that you just say it to yourself. You don't have that response. The Chazan and everyone responds, right? Why is it that when it comes to the point of Ana Hashem Hoshiana, why is it that is done, that the community follows, and they say and they say Ana Hashem Hoshiana out loud, or even though that is not the beginning of a chapter? Why? It's the middle of a chapter. So why is this response of the community to the Ana Hashem Hoshiana? That teaches us, but that was teaching the community that if you had a person who was leading the community who was not of proper age, let's say there was a child that was leading the community, let's say there was a child that knew how to say the Hallel, which is not the nicest thing, that the one who's leading the community, we said, is the child who's reading the Hallel on behalf of the community. But let's say that was the situation, that there was someone who was reading the Hallel who was not obligated in the Hallel, in the same level obligation that you have. So what do you do in such a case? You repeat after the child. Just like today, if someone has a child who knows how to say Kiddush, and the child is under Bar Mitzvah, and the parents do not know how to say Kiddush, the child the parents will repeat every line after the child. But the child cannot cover you with the mitzvah, because the child is not obligated in the mitzvah of Kiddush the way a parent is obligated in the mitzvah of Kiddush, because he's a minor and you're an adult. So that's the same thing over here. This child, when it came to Hallel, if he would be reading the Hallel, you would have to go ahead and repeat after him. You cannot just fulfill your obligation by listening, because he's not a man who can cover you. So to remember that halacha, that in the old day, to remember that halacha, today maybe the days of Rava, everybody's knowledgeable in saying the Hallel. They know how to say the Hallel. But in the early days, when people did not know, and there were many times that maybe there might have been a child that actually would say the Hallel out loud, you needed to repeat after the child every pasuk, because the child, listening to the child, does not cover you. So that's the Mikashim Katin. What do you say? So we're talking about, let's say, in the beginning of the Second Temple, let's say around 2,300 years ago, 2,400 years ago, let's say was most probably then the original enactment of the Hallel. The beginning of the Second Temple by the men of, let's say, of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset Agdola, and among them were prophets. Ezra, famous Ezra. So in that time period, many of the people did not know the Hallel. And so if there was a situation that the child would recite the Hallel, you would repeat after him. And that's why the custom became that even in the time of Rava, when people knew how to say the Hallel, but to remember that halacha, because if it ever happens again, that there's the situation that there are people that don't know how to say the Hallel, and you have to make sure, and if depending on who the person who's reciting the Hallel is whether you need to repeat the whole thing after him, or you could just listen to his recital of the Hallel. If he's an adult, you could just sit back, listen, and maybe respond the proper place where you need to respond, but you don't have to say the whole Hallel with him. But if he's a minor, then you have to repeat everything after him. You respond, you need to respond to everything that he says. So therefore, you people want to train their child, their son, to say Kiddush Friday night. They have to be careful that if the kid is saying Kiddush and he's under bar mitzvah, you would not be able to be yotzei. You can't fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush by listening to your child say Kiddush. Similarly, let's say it comes Yom Tov, and the kid is taught in yeshiva how to say Kiddush. The mother can't just listen to the child saying the Kiddush. And on the holiday of Pesach, the father himself has to recite the Kiddush. If the child is under bar mitzvah, he will not be able to cover the members of the house who are over bar mitzvah. Now, the next is Shehu Omer Ana Hashem Atzlichana. So why is the pasuk we say Ana Hashem Atzlichana, and the person responds Ana Hashem Atzlichana? In the Hallel itself, the Hallel says the word Ana Hashem Atzlichana once in the Tehillim, but yet in the Hallel we repeat the repetition. It says that Ana Hashem Atzlichana twice. Why are you saying the word Ana Hashem Atzlichana twice? Now we just said the Ana Hashem Oshiana said twice because you have to teach you that if the person will be reading to you the Hallel as someone who's uneducated, you can't just listen to him. You have to repeat it. So that's why Ana Hashem in the Hallel is read twice. In the Tehillim itself, it's not written double. It's written once. Ana Hashem Oshiana. So it's written twice to teach you that what? If a child is reading the Hallel, you have to repeat after him. So why is it written in the Hallel, Ana Hashem Atzlichana twice? That's to teach you that if you want to double the psukim of the Hallel, if you want to repeat the psukim of the Hallel, you have a right to. Meaning, in the general, when you say things, you don't just repeat things. Good morning. You don't have a right generally to repeat parts of davening. We don't, let's say you're saying Psuki de Zimra, or you don't just repeat Psukim. You say the word once. You don't say the word, you don't say the same Pasuk twice. Let's say, Az Yashia, let's say you're saying Az Yashia. Az Yashia Moshe V'Nei Az Hashem. You don't say Az Yashia Moshe, you don't say it twice in a row. You say it once. But when it comes to Hallel, since we found that one of the major chapters of Hallel, there's a lot of themes there are a lot of repetition ideas. Like we said, the beginning of the last chapter of Hallel opens up with Hodol Hashem Ki Tov Ki Lam Chasto, and that's how it opens. And the conclusion is also Hodol Hashem Ki Tov Ki Lam Chasto. So we see, and then also we said there's the Yom Hana Yisrael, Yom Hana Beit Aaron, very similar. The way the writing, the style of that chapter is very repetitious. Things that seem to be repetitive ideas or similarities that are in the writing. And we said, therefore, because that's the case, you have a right to the whole Hallel. You have a right to repeat the whole Hallel. If you want to read a pasuk in Hallel and then read the same pasuk in Hallel again, you're able to do so. And we're teaching you that, and that is taught to us by the custom of repeating this pasuk of Ana Hashem Hatzlichana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. That teaches that law. So the next time we recite the Hallel, this Friday, Okay, this Friday is Rosh Chodesh. Friday and Shabbat are Rosh Chodesh. Correct, everybody? There's 2 days Rosh Chodesh. So now we're going to have a total different outlook and appreciation of why certain psukim, why certain things are repeated in the. But we're saying the reason why we're repeating those the only reason why we're repeating it is to teach us the custom. They became accustomed to repeat certain parts of the Hallel, certain psukim, certain verses, because of certain of Zeich, like Simon says, because or Zeichat how they did it originally, or the idea was to teach you certain halachot. I mean, so we have a halacha to know that you have a right to be teaching the halacha. You have a right to repeat the psukim of the Hallel. It's teaching you a law that you have to make sure who's reading you the Hallel to see whether you have to repeat everything after, or you could just listen to him. And the idea that in the old days the idea of responding the Hodel Hashem Kitov Kilam Chasod, that they would follow the Chazan. They would say out loud in the old days the beginning of each chapter of the Tehillim, of the Hallel. So each thing that we're doing, whether it's the repetition of Ana Hashem Moshiach, Ana Hashem Aslichana, or reciting out loud the Hodel Hashem Kitov Kilam Chasdo, each thing is teaching us coming for a certain. There is a rhyme and a reason for everything, and now we have a different appreciation for why we're doing certain things in the Hallel. And then in the times of Rava, they had another custom. What was the other custom? The Chazan would say Baruch haba b'shem Hashem, right? It's towards the end of the b'shem Hashem, v'rachnuchem et beit Hashem, right? So it's on page 435 in the Hallel. Morning mark. So it's a clear mark. A lot of these things that we're doing today is the repetition of certain things, and it's based on the old customs or to teach a certain halacha. And they had a custom that they had an interesting custom. Listen to their custom they had. The Chazan would say Baruch haba, and the community would respond b'shem Hashem. And the community did not repeat the words Baruch haba after the Chazan. They would listen to the Chazan say the words Baruch haba, and they would not follow. They would not repeat the words Baruch haba after the Chazan. They would just say the words b'shem Hashem. Now, why didn't they repeat the words Baruch haba when the Chazan said it? It's because they wanted to show that you could. There's a concept of listening to someone, the law, that you could be covered by someone else saying it, and that could cover you. And by the fact that you did not repeat these words after the Chazan, everybody was careful, let's not to recite in the time words about yourself. What would you do? You would stop to listen to the Chazan. Now, why would you stop to listen to the Chazan? You wanted to stop to listen, and you would not say it, even if you were a person that would generally like to repeat after the Chazan. You would not say those words. You would be quiet. You would listen to the Chazan say the words Baruch haba. You would not say it, but what you would say afterwards, you would say b'shem Hashem. Remember, in the times of Rava, they all knew how to say the Hallel. They all were educated to say the Hallel. So the community is going to be saying the Hallel themselves in the times of Rava. They're not relying on the Chazan Hallel, right? And there's only certain parts of the Hallel that they actually get involved, like similar to today's day and age. Today's day and age, we don't rely on the Chazan's Hallel. We all say Hallel. We say Hallel along when we pray along with the Chazan. But even though we said Hallel along with the Chazan, like we do today, and we found certain things we repeat, right? On Hashem, the community would stop when they would get towards the end of the Hallel. I presume they picked that spot to end the Hallel, and they would say the Chazan. Everybody would be quiet. The Chazan would say the words Baruch Haba, and nobody would say those words. Nobody said those words Baruch Haba, and everyone would just respond B'Shem Hashem. Now the question is, how can nobody say those words? You didn't say it. How could you fulfill your mitzvah? You're missing words if you didn't say it. The answer is because the fact that he said it, the Chazan said it, and we listened to it, that works. And that's teaching us that lesson that we need to know when a person doesn't know how to say it, you know what? You could just, someone else can't put on tefillin for me. You can't put on tefillin for me. But you could say the Hallel for me. And that's what it's going to teach. Here we are in a time period, in the time of Ravah, that everybody knows how to say the Hallel. But we got to remember the law that, you know what, you could actually technically, for people who don't know how to say the Hallel, they can listen to someone say the Hallel, and that would cover them. So that, Jaime, is that clear? So that was the purpose of just nobody say those words, and you still get credit for it. Why? Because you heard the Chazan. So that teaches you the Chazan has the ability to cover you, and you say nothing. If
Rabbi,
you would be a person,
if these minhagim,
everybody,
if these minhagim all became
including
reliable,
those who know, but it's probably better for the people who know to generally say it themselves. It would seem, but if they, right, even the people who know did not say the words Baruch Haba. Correct. They just listen. And I think it's a very, you want to say something, Jaime?
I was just wondering if these minhagim became reliable for law, what happens if there was all different minhagim everywhere around the world at the time? Which one is dependable to?
Right. It seems like it was not, there was no one universal custom because, I mean, unless in the time of Rava that became the custom, but different communities changed different things. The commentaries asked the question, why today don't we do this one? But certain things that they did in the days of Rava, we don't do that. We don't have everybody stopping. And the Chazan says, Baruch Haba, we all say nothing, and we just say the word B'Shem Hashem. We don't have such a custom, but probably there are reasons, obviously, for it. But this was not a universal, these type of things were just customs that were done to teach certain lessons. But a lot of the things we do, we repeat Ana Hashem, we have Ana Hashem Mashiach twice, Ana Hashem Maslichana, we have that Hodol Hashem Kitov Kilam Chasto. There are many things that we have, but these were customs, and it doesn't seem like it became one universal custom. We picked up most of the things we picked up. That's what it seems like. Now, like a lot of things, these are, we call them nuances in the mitzvah. It's like everybody's doing the mitzvah. The question is how, the way you do it. Do you say this? You don't say this. How you say this? But we're generally on the same page. Except just even like the Sfardim Ashkenazim, a few words here, a few words there. But generally, it's everybody's saying an Amidah. Everyone, the change, the differences are less than really the similarities. So I think that's what we need to. Good morning, David. You should know, by the way, Jaime, there's a very interesting idea back when it came to blowing of the shofar, and everybody should know. There's a quick question. What's the proper? The Torah says on shofar, Yom Truah Tieh Lachem. The Torah says that it's a day of back. What's the way of, it still looks like it's supposed, okay. What's the way of doing a crying sound? Jaime, are you able to hear?
Yes.
The Torah says make a crying sound. So some communities, you know how they did the crying sound? We call it shvarim. There were some communities that, how they cried? There were some communities that had a combination. right? And we call this Shema Trua. So, so now you would come to one community for Rosh Hashanah. They used to blow. They used to just only blow shvarim. That's it. They did those. Another community did the and another community did the combo. So therefore they wanted to unify these. Shouldn't be that it looks like there's two Torah. It looks like the mitzvah of blowing the shofar is done totally different in the Spanish community and the Iraqi community, whatever, if they cry differently. So therefore, to unify everything as one, they went ahead and they said you got to do all three. And therefore that just shows the sensitivity of sometimes unifying the community. Maybe that was a very clear, strong difference in the performance of the mitzvah. So maybe that's why there was a feeling that you need to go ahead and make everything look more like one. There are certain halachas that we find also when it comes to tefillin. If you have a shul that nobody puts on tefillin on Chalamoy, but in the Sephardi shul, you don't put on a tefillin. Nobody's putting on tefillin. Certain things you don't do that makes it look like it's pushed. Ashkenaz have a split. And that's why you come here, right? And the Hasidim don't put on tefillin Chalamoy. But the old Ashkenaz minhag it was such a strong minhag they even said a bracha on the tefillin Chalamoy. But today, most Ashkenazim, the ones who put on, do not say a bracha. They've been influenced over the. I had in mind. I didn't answer anything. I get credit because the fact that you had me in mind and I had in mind, that does the trick. That makes me get credit, even if I didn't respond to anything. Because remember, how does it work? By listening, it's like I said it. But they heard Kiddush. Nobody responded to me. But they.
Rabbi, isn't there a rule called Shomea Ke'oneh?
even though you got credit for kiddush, but if you didn't drink from the wine, you didn't drink from the kiddush or from whatever cups of wine you had in front of you. You heard if you heard that someone said kiddush Friday night, and the person said kiddush Friday night said it on a wine that I don't like to drink.
Same wine and a half hour later.
And if it's the same wine a half hour later, if I don't drink from the wine of the kiddush, and then I go ahead and I had nothing from the kiddush wine, even if the same wine a half hour later, but I interrupted tremendously between the kiddush and the time I had the other wine later. If I had no kiddush wine at all, and then I want to go ahead later on during the meal, I want to have a cup of wine, I have to say a bracha geffen on the wine. Hamotzi does not cover wine. Is that clear? Hamotzi doesn't cover wine. If you're having a dinner tonight, you're having hamotzi and they're serving wine at the dinner, you have to make a appropriate geffen. So Friday night, now what's the law on Shabbat? If you drink wine from kiddush, what?
Wine. I say the better. I drink. My friend here says I don't want to drink now. I have acid reflux. I'm not going to drink. He sits down, has dinner. We make hamotzi, and now he said, "You know what? I'll have a little more."
He has to say a bracha again because 10 minutes later, same wine, but he did not. He didn't drink from. That's to my understanding. You could. I want you, Mark. I want you to. Mark. I want you to. I'm going to give you homework. I want you to reach out to one of your. You have many rabbis on your speed dial. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. Never too many. Never too many. Remember that? He's joking, as you know. Never too many. And you're going to ask them that question. I want to see what they respond and see. Give you homework for tomorrow.
Rabbi, isn't there a rule shomea ke'oneh?
Yeah, shomea ke'oneh is that's the law that we're saying. By listening is like you responded. But if you did not drink from the wine of kiddush, you got credit for kiddush. Say it again.
The main cup, or
even if everybody has their own cup of wine, if they had a wine, if they had a wine, they listened to kiddush and they drank the wine. There's an interruption. I'm saying there's an interruption. Right, Jaime's right. The shomea ke'oneh. If you listen, it's like you said it. But if I could drink
answer amen to qualify to have said it.
That's the chiddush of the Gemara. That you're supposed to answer amen. Even if you don't answer amen, you get credit for the mitzvah.
So if you hear kiddush without answering amen, but you hear kiddush and you don't drink wine, you got credit for kiddush?
Yes, because that's what the Gemara says. It's as if you said it.
You can't drink wine 10 minutes later.
But then you want to be able to drink the wine like Mark said. If 10 minutes later you want to drink wine and you didn't drink any wine at the kiddush, then you would have to make a bracha on the wine because you didn't have anything of the kiddush wine.
Rabbi, I learned that in the concept of listening to Divrei Torah without Birkot Torah, and Shomea Ke'oneh is if you're listening to Torah, it's as if you answered, so therefore you need to say Birkot Torah before you listen to Torah even.
Right, beautiful, 100%.
Same principle?
Yes, that's definitely the way a person's supposed to act. They're supposed to, there's a whole discussion if you think Torah, but definitely if you hear Torah, you should definitely say Birkat Torah before you hear Torah, because as if you said the Torah.
Right. The question is on Hirur, right? Which is think.
Correct. Hirur is the question. If you think Torah, whether you have to say bracha before it. Correct.
How would you still have to make it up? If you're sad, you're done. You don't have to make it up. You're saying you're sad by listening.
Right.
I didn't drink. Now, 10 minutes later, I want to drink. I'm suddenly not your sad anymore. I have to make a better cup. The guy who drank the kiddush surely doesn't have to make better cup.
Listen, the fact if a person makes kiddush, you have no question. If you never drink anything from the kiddush, you're yotzei. So what does it mean you're yotzei? What does it mean? You got credit for kiddush. That's all it means. It means you got credit for kiddush. The kiddush was recited over a cup of wine. So therefore, that's all you needed. Most probably, you need to accomplish by kiddush is that kiddush has to be done over a cup of wine, and it was done. The fact that you didn't drink from the wine, but there was a kiddush that was recited over a cup of wine. That's good enough. That's what it seems like. However, if you want to drink wine later on,
all of a sudden you're not. It's there for that. You have to do a whole kiddush.
No. Very different. You don't have to be a new kiddush. You got credit for kiddush, but the question is, do you have to say a bar pei gefen when you have wine during the meal if you didn't drink from the kiddush wine? That's the question, Gary. You hear the question? So we're saying if you didn't drink from the Kiddush wine, and now during the meal you want to have wine, you have to make a bar geffen. Hamotzi doesn't cover wine. If you had wine before in that Kiddush, the wine at Kiddush covers you for the wine during the meal. Right, David? But if you had no wine at Kiddush, now you want to have wine during the meal, you have to say a bar geffen on the wine. Okay, that'll be a question whether you got credit for the Kiddush at all. Right, that's why it's important that the person who says Kiddush should drink at least a certain amount of the wine, at least an ounce and a half, some say an ounce. And some say you could join if multiple people drink from the wine together. That's also a discussion. Could you join everyone drinking together? Okay, we have to get ready we're late for davening. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great day, Jaime. Mark, you got homework to do.